Morning everyone, or afternoon or evening whenever you're watching this video. I posted a question on the community part of YouTube as to what video you'd like next, and there was a resounding requirement for having a look at my audio install in the MR2, so I'm going to go and have a look at that now, show you what I've got, why I chose what I chose, some tips for you on install, and just a general discussion about it. So there should be some things for you if you're looking to install some speakers or a different stereo system or a subwoofer, that kind of thing. So stay tuned and let's get on with it. Okay, so the first thing I changed was the head unit or stereo or whatever you'd like to call it. Now I went with this unit, and this unit has now been in this car for 4 years, and this is the Eonon GA2116. As I say, it's 4 years old now, so I'm not even sure whether you'll be able to buy this anymore. I did take a bit of a punt with it. It was it's an Android unit. I think it's Android 4.4.4, something like that. It suits my need perfectly. I'm not going to turn it on and go through it all. The very first video I did on the channel was about this very unit because somebody in America asked me to do a video on it because they wanted to see the features. So I'm going to post that up here in the cards. So if you want to have a look at that, there's a link for that. Now, what would I say about this unit? It was feature packed. It did everything I want to do. It's got built-in GPS, it's got USB feeds on the back. One of those USB feeds I'm using for this camera here. And on the basis of that camera, I did say a while ago I was changing that out for a dash cam, and I still am. And I cannot remember who asked me for that camera, and I said they could have it. Let me know in the comments because I'm changing that out very soon because we're in lockdown at the UK at the moment. So these little jobs, I've got some time to be able to perhaps get those done. Yeah, so there's two USB feeds. Now, one of them I've got a 32 gig memory stick plugged into full of music, and the other one is providing the feed and power for that dash cam. I've also got a reverse cam link to it, which I've mounted just above the rear registration plate, and that works brilliantly. And every time, whether the unit is switched on or not, as soon as you put it in reverse, the camera goes straight on. Now, fitting the head unit, you can either go for a double DIN unit to replace what you had originally. Now, there was two versions fitted in this car. The early one was a Sony unit. Now, one thing I will say about that Sony unit is the surrounds that came with those Sony units, and this isn't one of them, are pretty universal for most double DIN units produced by people like Kenwood and other people. So definitely hold on to that because they're quite sought after. So that was the earlier one in the pre-facelift. In the facelift model from 03, you had a proprietary Toyota head unit fitted. And they're okay, don't get me wrong, but they don't obviously have features such as Bluetooth or things like that. So this is fully feature packed with that. It's got Bluetooth. Getting to take this off, you just remove these two side parts here. These things just pop off, and you unscrew these, and then there's two screws either side here, and the unit just withdraws. Now, the issue that some people have with removing the stock head units is the surrounds have a little lug which hook behind the HVAC section here. Now, I managed to just pry mine out. I didn't have to remove this. A lot of people just loosen this off for ease to be able to just get it out. I didn't have to. It wasn't an issue for me. Now, in terms of making it look pretty, mine sticks slightly forward. This is sort of the stock position, and if you'd have seen an earlier video, this was where I completely changed the stock cigar lighter and ashtray and cup holder for this panel here. So this is where it would stock be, and it's just protrudes slightly. Now, at the time, what I did was I made a surround using the existing stock surround to make that look neat. Now, what I could have actually done is the stock mounting brackets that screw back into the stock position here. I could have actually re-drilled those, and in the fullness of time I might do that, but I quite enjoy that just being about 5 or 10 mil further forward than it was from stock, so that's fine for me. Now this here is the stock surround for the stock head unit, and most double din won't fill this out properly. What you'll have to do is get these, what they're called ears, I think, in the MR2 community. And what I would say to you is I bought 2 different versions of these and none of them fitted. What I actually had to do, and the brackets on them were absolutely useless as well, so I ended up cutting the brackets off. I had to trim about 3 mil off this side here, and then I actually super glued that into the frame there, so it sits in there neatly. Now obviously there's a certain amount of precision to make it look neat in doing that, but it's easily achievable. Taking your time with a good sharp craft or Stanley knife, it's not going to be any trouble at all. And as I say, I just super glued that in there and that was fine, and that kept that nice and neat. Now coupled with that, I also fitted, and I'll put some pictures up as I'm talking as to what I fitted and how, perhaps a little more, in here and here, and behind this section here there's a crossover. I fitted Focal AS165 component speakers. Why did I choose those? Focals are excellent quality. They produce excellent kit. The kit at the time I bought on Amazon, and that was about 4 years ago once again, that was somewhere around £100. And what you get for that is a 1-inch tweeter, a 16.5 centimetre, which is where the 165 comes from, mid-range sub, and the crossover, and you get cable and stuff in there as well. Main reason for choosing those is they have high sensitivity, so you don't need to amp the crap out of them to sound good. I originally have cabled this car for amplifier power and signal feeds, but I haven't had to. The stock amplifier in this car, in this unit here, provides more than enough power for these speakers, and they are excellent. So top tips when you fit them in: yes, you can use the stock grey speaker surround. Be sure when you gut the stock speaker out to take the card part off so it mounts flush if you're using the 165, so they clamp down good and hard. But if you need a little bit of extra clearance, leave that card ring in there and that will move it forward about 4 or 5 mil. And behind the panel, get yourself some sound deadening or some butyl roofing tape, which is what I bought in the UK from a company called Screwfix. Anyone who's watching this in the UK has heard of Screwfix, I'm sure. And around the doors there'll be cutouts which don't really serve any purpose in terms of you haven't got cables coming through them and that kind of stuff on the inner skin of the door. And I covered the door, those apertures, being sure not to foul anything like a locking mechanism. You know, there's rods coming through here and behind that inner skin, so don't foul any of that, but cover all those holes over. And I also put a good section of sound deadening on the inside of the outer skin of the door, which you can easily get to. There's a nice big aperture in the door there, and what that essentially does is it creates the door, covering it over, it creates like a sort of base enclosure for that speaker, and it does provide quite a difference in sound. So yeah, I was really pleased with that. And one other tip is also, before you put the doors back on, and you'll see that I did a video about taking these doors off, and I'll link that in the card up here. When you put the door back on, just put a little, not loads, just a little tiny blob of silicone. You know, any silicone would do, you know, like the white bath silicone or the clear, you know, that kind of silicone. That's what I'm talking about. And then put your door panel back in. Now, it's not about sticking the door panel to the metal of the door, and this is why I say just use a little bit. What this stops happening is the little white plastic press studs that fit this door panel back on, it prevents those from rattling from the base of whatever speaker you're putting in there, and that really helps with that. I found that really made a difference as well. So something else I added was this here, and this is the Sony RM-X2S. There's 3 different versions of this. I give it a massive knock the other day and it's come out of the mount, so I'm going to have to take that back out and put that in the rubber surround. It sort of clamps between that metal plate and the body, but it's on there tight. It just doesn't look, I need to sort that out. Anyway, there's 3 different versions of these, and I think these are becoming quite rare now. And they come with it looks like a 3.5mm jack plug on the end of these. It's not, it's slightly smaller. But basically you cut that plug off and it exposes the wires that are required to put onto the wire feet. You get bare wires to attach on the back of this unit, and probably lots of other units are the same. And so now what I'm able to do, because it's not the greatest to be you're driving along, that's my sound recorder there, you're driving along, and then you've got to sort of look down here, which is why I put navigation as well as the digital gauges for the ECU and so forth there. That's not the greatest position to be looking at maps and things and controls and so forth. So this does a multitude of things, and once again, if you have a look at that video that talks about that head unit, you'll see all the things that can be controlled. That is one of the best things I've added. You don't, of course, need to have one of these. There's lots of Bluetooth options, which you can just stick on the side of the column, or perhaps put on your steering wheel, or you could attach here somewhere. Lots of different options, but yeah, so that's entirely up to yourself. Now, just as I sit here, one other tip is split the power. If you're running additional power into the car, which is what I did for this head unit, I run fresh feed from the battery, which was fused close to the battery, into the rear compartment, and my power lines are running along this side here, and my signal lines, so speaker lines, RCA, signal cables and things like that, are running down what would be the driver's side in the UK or the passenger side in the US. It's always best, if you can, to split power on one side and signal feed on the other, because then you're not picking up any interference. And I haven't experienced any of that at all in this car, so that's fine. Subwoofer. So I have added a subwoofer to this car. Now, lots of people decide that they're going to fit a subwoofer into the void that's behind the driving column here. Why didn't I do that? So voids behind driving columns and things, as far as I'm concerned, are there for a reason, and if the front of the car has to crumple in an accident, I don't want a big block of subwoofer smacking into my shins or knees, or ankles for that matter. So what I did was I've mounted mine in the rear cubby, and we'll take a look at that now. Okay, so in the rear cubby here we have my little subwoofer. It's pretty small, that's the size of my hand by comparison. It's a Kenwood unit, active subwoofer, and it's the KSC SW11. I've got to say, this little unit, I mean, I've put a lot of stereo systems into a lot of cars for both myself and other people, and normally I'd go with something like a 10 or a 12-inch sub in a boot if I wanted to go that way, and 9 times out of 10 I usually did. The output of this thing is absolutely amazing. I'm really pleased with it. Having a sub in the car does add to the sound experience. It's a little bit better because I've got the hardtop on. You do obviously lose some of the sound when you've got the roof down or you've got your vinyl or fabric roof. However, it was still, the whole system was still excellent as it was, and this I think was something like 110, 120 pounds. Once again, I've had this for about 4 years. It comes with this controller, which originally I was going to mount somewhere on the dash, but didn't bother in the end, because once I set it up I never really used it again, so I just left it sitting here in the rear cubby. And of course these are lockable as well, so no real problem there. I was going to go to the trouble of fixing it down and all that kind of stuff, but in the end I just loosened off the strap that holds the jack kit in for the car and just strapped it down on top of that, and it's been fine. It's really solid, doesn't move anywhere. And if we just have a look in the corner there, there's the cable that I've run to the rear in case I wanted to put speakers in the rear cubbies, and there's a secondary set of RCA signal cables in the event that I wanted to put an amp in here as well, because when I was running the cable I only wanted to do it once, and they're fairly inexpensive for what they are, because you don't need massive long 5-meter lengths of cable, they're only a small car. So if you've got any questions on what I've talked about today in the install process, stick them in the comments section for me, and I'll, as always, reply to all the comments that I get. I'd really do love getting all your comments, and don't forget to subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you might want to see next. And I think I'll leave it there for now. Have a great day, rest of your day or evening, whenever you're watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.